Hello everyone and welcome back once again to my channel and to another PMDG DC-6 video. We are back in this beautiful US Air Force livery and we will make our second attempt to land at Marambio Airport in Antarctica. For those of you who haven't seen the previous video yet, we basically tried to fly to this airport before, but during the flight we encountered a bug that for some reason messed up the throttles, which caused the aircraft to lose all thrust, and eventually we ended up in the ocean just 10 nautical miles away from the destination. It was quite unexpected and a bit disappointing since I really wanted to show you guys the free scenery that I downloaded for Marambio Airport, and that's why I've decided to try this flight again and see if we can do a better job at it this time around. I have made a couple of adjustments to the flight plan this time, however. I had a sneaking suspicion that the bug we encountered last time had something to do with the region we flew through in the previous flight. So to avoid that region we will be approaching the airfield from the opposite direction today, which means we will be departing from another airport in Antarctica itself. And that will be Rothera Research Station, located further to the south of Marambio Airport. It's definitely not an ideal airfield for a DC-6 because of its short runway, but if we don't make the airplane that heavy we should be able to make it in the air on time, albeit with a bit of help from the water injection system that the DC-6 is equipped with. The flight time is way shorter than the last flight, only around an hour or so. So very quickly before we start, be sure to do a touch and go on that big red subscribe button along with the bell icon to get notifications of new content every time. Also, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video and feel free to comment down below what you would want to see next on the channel. Now without further ado, let's jump into the cockpit. Here we are inside the flight deck of the beautiful DC-6. As you can see, not in a cold and dark condition as per usual. That's because the weather at the airport is very cold at the moment, so I just wanted to turn on the windshield heat as soon as possible. And also for the sake of time, I wanted to speed up the video a little bit by already doing the most of the pre-flight checks. The flight engineer still has to do his checks though, so you'll still be able to see that. And I've already filled up the aircraft with both fuel and cargo. I've only put the gross weight up to 70,000 pounds, which should be low enough to get us off the ground in time, but we'll see about that. And for some reason the light here in the cockpit is automatically turned on, but we're just gonna turn that off by increasing the lights in the cockpit ourselves, like so. Now we can see a little bit more, and something that I still need to do though is program the GPS here, so we'll do that very quickly. The code for the airport from which we are departing today is Echo Golf Alpha Romeo. Like so, Rothera Research Station in the British Antarctic territory. So we're gonna fly from the British parts of Antarctica to the Argentinian parts, like in the last video. Like so, our only waypoint for today is the Marambio VOR, which is Mike Bravo India. If I can figure out where the letter M is, there we go. Mike Bravo India, which is the VOR. There we go. And then we go to the airport itself, which is Sierra Alpha Whiskey Bravo. Like so, and that's everything we need to do for the flight plan, so we can go ahead to the actual flight plan page. Looks like we will have to make either a right turn, a right turn after departure, I believe, if the active runway is still the same as the last time I did this flight, because I had to test this flight, of course, because I didn't want the same bug to occur in this flight as well. So yesterday I just did this flight real quickly and everything seemed pretty normal, so hopefully this flight will go without any problems. One last thing I need to check before we are able to go is the weather, of course. So according to the weather forecast, there should be a light rain here, but I don't see any. And the wind is 070 at 12 knots. So the runway we're gonna use for departure apparently is runway 36, which is probably, oh, it's actually the other runway on that side. Last time I used that runway, so that means we'll probably make a left turn after departure instead. So that's something good to keep in mind, of course. And let's press B here to set the QNH real quickly. It's almost sea level. So yeah, the reason why I didn't just use the scroll wheel is because the weather report here only gives the altimeter setting in hectopascal, and I don't know, it doesn't display it on the altitude indicator in that it doesn't display it in hectopascal, only in inches of mercury, so that's just why I pressed B real quickly. So yeah, that's everything we need to do for departure, I believe. There's no departure procedure at this airport, just climb straight ahead and just follow the flight plan. That's what we are going to do. So time for the flight engineer to do his job for us.
Cockpit preflight.
And in the meantime, we'll close up the aircraft.
Completed. Voice recorder. Tasted. Oil coolers and
He always switches some buttons up, but I don't think I missed anything during the pre-flight. Another thing that we need to do is the pressurization, of course. The flight engineer always says it's set, but actually we need to do it ourselves, at least to do it properly. And the stairs have been retracted, so the last door can be closed.
Closed.
He always says closed, but the doors are still in the midst of closing, so I don't know what's up with that. Maybe PMDG will fix that in the future. I have no idea.
Throttles.
So he'll crank up the throttles for us.
Set to idle. Propellers. Forward and 3. Before start checks complete. Start engines.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, flight engineer, for preparing the aircraft for us. Now we can go ahead and start up the engines. Now I got a comment on my last video, I believe, of someone saying that the procedure that I use for starting up the engine is not really 100% correct, and apparently the way that real pilots would do it is they would start the engine by pressing these two buttons, then they would wait for the 9 call out from the flight engineer or co-pilot, then they would turn on the ignition, and then they would engage the mixture, and once they hear 12, then you would press the boost and prime pump. Now, it does make sense why they would do it this way, because when the engine is turning until the flight engineer calls out 12 blades, there's no real reason why the magneto should be running. But I just find it very difficult to switch between views all the time, and there's not a lot of time between the 9 and 12 callouts, so I'm just gonna keep doing it the way I normally do it, which is engage all of the mixtures right now. And then I'm going to turn on the magnetos for engine number 3 and then just start the engine.
3, 6, 9, 12.
There we go, that's one good engine. So yeah, it does make sense why they do it the other way in the real life, but for the sake of convenience, I'm just gonna keep doing it the way I learned it from the tutorials of PMDG themselves, and I think it's either that they use just a completely other method by another airline, or they just realize that it's way easier to do it this way, and that's why they taught to everyone that way. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing it the way I've always done it, which is this way. But I do appreciate that the person who sent me that comment made me aware that this is the proper, or that's the procedure that he explained is the proper procedure. I really appreciate that he took the time to explain it to me, and I hope he can understand that I'm gonna keep using this method instead. But I do really appreciate that people are involved with my content like that and actually take the time to explain different things to me and point things out that I'm doing wrong. So thanks to the person who sent me that message, or comment I should say.
3, 6, 9, 12.
There we go. The engine RPMs are still below 1000, so that's good. Fuel pressure and oil temperature are good as far as I can see. A bit warm of course, but that's normal at this stage. So we'll turn off the boost pump for engine number 4 and turn the one for engine number 2 on. Same for the magnetos. Then engine selector to number 2, and we'll do it all
3,
again.
6, 9, 12.
And another good engine. Last time when I did the practice flight for this particular flight, after I crashed in the middle of the ocean in the last video, I actually tried to start these engines, but they just wouldn't do it, and I was looking at the engine stress visualizer, and these four circles were the same as these circles here, and that meant that the engines were completely broken. And that's because the aircraft actually remembered that we crashed in the last flight, so I was desperately trying to start the engines, but they just wouldn't work, and that's because I had to repair them first. So we have 4 brand new engines now, so that's good. Maybe they will run a little bit smoother now. And then last engine, same process.
3, 6, 9, 12.
So there we go, we have 4 good engines, we can idle them now. And we can let the flight engineer do the after start checklist as well.
Select boost pumps. Off and off. Battery switch complete.
Okay, there we go, after start checklist complete. We're also going to do the before start checklist right away. And just to be on the safe side, I'm also going to turn on the airfoil heater and prop de-icer, because it's rather cold here and I don't really know if there's any moisture in the air, but just to be on the safe side, like I said, I'm going to turn on the anti-ice anyway. Can't hurt, right? Yeah, we can go right ahead and taxi to our departure runway, which is right over there. And as you'll see, it's quite a short runway, so last time I was able to take off, but then the aircraft was a bit lighter, so I do hope that the aircraft will also be able to take off with this slightly higher weight.
Windows and turbine.
Yeah, we'll see. Gonna be, of course, using
Closed and on.
the water injection system during this flight,
Gust lock release.
or takeoff, I should say.
Pitot-heater. On. Mixture and cold flaps.
So there's the end of the runway already, and you can see the other end is just over there, so really short runway. I do hope the wind favors
Landing lights.
this runway. The windsocks are telling a different story, but that's of course that might be because the windsocks are completely wrong in this sim.
Extended and on.
They have the tendency to point in the completely opposite direction from where the wind is coming, so normally the wind should actually go in a different direction, which is the right way. Yeah, I don't want to keep these engines in that between 10 and 15 RPM, but I do want to go a little bit faster than this, so there we go. Let's go right ahead and turn this aircraft around. Make sure we don't go off the edge there. And get as close to the edge as possible as well. Can't really see it, but there's frozen water over there, so that's obviously not somewhere we want to end up. And we really want to use as much of this runway as we possibly can. There we go, stop right here. One last thing we need to check before we can head out is the V-speeds. We have a gross weight of 70,000 pounds, so at sea level that gives us a V1 of 83 knots and a V2 of 95 knots, so just below the 100 knots mark we can rotate. So parking brake released. I'm still going to step on the brakes for a little bit, and let's request a wet departure. All of the water pumps are active.
30 inches stabilize. 30 inches stabilize.
So let's hope for the best here. Can already see the end of the runway. This is quite interesting.
Stabilized. Cal flaps. Cal flaps. Cal flaps set. Full power, please. Going full power.
I'm going to wait, like always, until the flight engineer has set full power and all the engines are stabilized. All of the pumps are now active.
Full power set.
And there we go. Here goes nothing, guys. Airspeed is alive. V1. Rotate. And there we go. Positive rate, guys. We are out of the woods.
Gear selected up.
And make sure we don't fly into any of this terrain that we have in front of us here.
Gear up, lights out. Flaps up. Flaps going up.
So making a right turn for departure. It's not a left turn after all. That is quite convenient because I didn't want to really turn towards this terrain here.
Meter power. Setting meter power 48 inches, 2600 RPM.
So let's start to level out here so we don't fly through our flight plan.
Meter power set. Climb power. Setting climb power.
And Gyropilot can go on now. Lower the nose just a little bit. And we'll engage nav mode as well, but we still need to switch to GPS before we do that.
Climb power set. After takeoff checklist, please.
And we do have to keep an eye on that terrain here in front of us. That might cause some issues if we don't climb fast enough. But we'll see. Might have to make a slight detour here. So here we are, guys, at our cruising altitude of 13,000 feet. Hope you enjoyed that cruise phase there and the very nice sunset that we have at the moment. The last time I did this exact flight, the weather was much worse than this, so we could only see the clouds that we were passing through, but this time you can actually admire Antarctica in all its glory here. It's quite an extraordinary continent. It's a continent I really like to visit in the sim. So yeah, we can now turn off the airfoil heater and the prop de-icer, and probably also the windshield heat. There isn't a cloud in sight. Well, over there's a bit of clouds and below us, but at the altitude we are at now, weather seems pretty clear as far as the eye can see. So I'll probably go ahead and cut the video right here. You can obviously still enjoy the views that I've got for you in store for you during the cruise. And after that, I'll be right back to brief the approach once again with you. We did that in the previous flight as well, so you might still remember some of the procedure. But yeah, I'll see you back at the top of drop. See you then. So guys, once again welcome back to the flight deck. I feel rather dumb right now because I did this intro already to the descent, but I forgot to unmute my mic, so none of that was picked up. So let me just say this all again. I've now started the descent towards 3,400 feet at 1,000 feet per minute. I calculated that the top of drop was 60 nautical miles from the Marambio VOR, so we've already crossed that. Yeah, other than that, I just said that it's already getting quite dark, and that hopefully the weather is not too bad at Marambio, which will hopefully make the approach a little bit more easy for us, since it's a quite short runway, which obviously makes it all difficult. And then I was searching for the floodlight, so as far as I know there isn't any white or red floodlight for this pedestal, but I did find the white floodlights, which I've turned up just a little bit so we can see the Gyropilot panel a bit better and all of that. So yeah, we are now on our way to the Marambio VOR and just gradually descending. This also seems like a good time for the engineer to do his thing.
26 inches, please. Setting 26 inches. Inches set. Descent checklist, please. Altimeters and flight instruments cross-checked. Seatbelt signs on. On. Engine blower is low. Low. Descent checks are complete.
So there we go, descent checklist complete, I believe. So everything is good to go until we are in range of the airport, and we'll do the in range checklist. But for now we can still enjoy some of the beautiful views. There's the moon over there, not a full moon as you can see, quite nice. Imagine if somebody would make a space shuttle for Microsoft Flight Simulator and you could actually fly to the moon. I think that would be pretty awesome. Don't know how long that flight would actually take, but I guess it's very long. But yeah, maybe someday a satellite would be developed for Microsoft Flight Simulator as the first step, and then who knows what the future will bring. Also, I'm quite excited for the Phoenix A320 that was announced. I believe it was somewhere this week, yesterday or maybe the day before that. I'm not sure, but I'm really quite excited for that airplane because right now we don't have really a decent A320 other than the fly-by-wire, but honestly my experience with that airplane has been pretty bad so far, and I'm not planning on using it for this channel ever again. So yeah, unless there's like a humongous performance boost, which I don't think there will be. So yeah, but once the Phoenix A320 is released and I see that the performance is actually good, like the performance of this aircraft and the Aerosoft CRJ, then I will definitely spend some time in that aircraft as well. And maybe it will even be a fixed aircraft for the channel. And by that I mean an aircraft which I will fly on a regular basis. Because this aircraft, as soon as there's the new aircraft, the PMDG 737, I suspect that the DC-6 will probably go to the background a little bit more. I won't fly it as often as now. Now I'm really doing a lot of flights with it to get familiar with it, but as soon as a newer and more modern aircraft comes out, I'm pretty sure I will go to that almost full time. I will of course sometimes still make a video on this aircraft since I really enjoy it, and I think it would be very nice to come back to this aircraft every once in a while. But yeah, as soon as all the other aircraft come out, I believe I will spend a lot more time in those, and I'm really looking forward to both the 737 and also the Phoenix A320 now. And I'm really curious to see what other aircraft Phoenix might bring out, since they are a bit of the new kid on the block, I would say. They are quite new developers. I had never heard from them before, and they said it themselves, a lot of people had never heard from them as well. So I'm curious to see what they will bring to the flight simulation world. So now that we are getting a bit closer to the airport, let me just real quickly show you the approach chart once again. I also showed this in the last flight, but here you go once again. We are now flying direct to the Marambio VOR, which is 117.0. I've programmed or tuned that in rather into the navigation radios. At Marambio we want to be at 3,400 feet, and then we are going to be at that altitude quite some miles before that, but that segment and the 8 miles that we are going to fly from the VOR will allow the aircraft to slow down sufficiently for the approach. And it's quite a steep approach. I also explained this in the last video. 3.82 degrees, which is a bit comparable with the approach at London City, so quite steep. And as you can see here, for a ground speed of between 120 and 140 knots, our descent rate should be around 800 to 1000 feet per minute, which is quite steep. So we'll definitely make sure that we are descending at that rate at all times, otherwise we won't be able to make it to the runway in time, or if you do, we'll be too fast to stop in time, which is a very large problem because I made that mistake the first time I landed here and it didn't end very well. So yeah, that's quite important. And missed approach, we're not gonna bother with that or anything, and our minimum altitude is 1070 feet, so if we don't have a visual with the airport, by the time we get to that altitude, we just stay at that altitude until we do have a visual, and then we can start our descent again until our missed approach point, which is basically at a threshold, it seems, or right above the VOR. So yeah, that's everything we need to know for the approach. Still descending steadily, and we've just passed 3400 feet, it seems, so let me just level off. It wasn't as smooth as I wanted it to be, but yeah, otherwise we would have descended too low, and now the aircraft will start to slow down to 140 knots, and we are still 16.3 nautical miles away from the airport, which is exactly where I aim to land. I want it to be about 12 nautical miles before the VOR. That would have given us the 20 nautical miles needed to slow down, and as you can see, we have a bonus of 3 to 4 nautical miles, so that's great. This aircraft does need its time to slow down. And there we have the airport. As you can see, the lights are already visible, and it seems the visibility is quite good at the airport. So that's all fantastic. Aircraft is slowing down nicely, it seems. And now I can see the aircraft on the Navigraph chart as well. So we're getting quite close. Let's just make sure that my mic is on, which it is. Great. And I'm gonna just turn down the volume of the aircraft just a tad so you can hear me a bit better maybe. Don't know how the audio is in this video, but it should be alright. And let me also get the flight recorder ready so I can show you a replay after this landing. And hopefully it will be a good replay, right? But yeah, that's all ready to go. This should definitely be an interesting approach with the lighting right now, and probably a good wind as well. Don't actually know what the wind information is right now. There doesn't seem to be a ADIS report or frequency, so, and I found that the internet reports are a bit unreliable sometimes, so I have no idea. According to the latest meta report, the wind is 070 at 11 knots, but that seems unlikely, but we'll see. Let me just check another report as well. Okay, so it seems like we're gonna have a headwind slash crosswind. Checked a website which gives a very handy visualization of the wind. So it seems like we're gonna have a headwind, which does work in our favor since it will allow us to slow down easier on such a small runway. So that's good. And the crosswind will make it obviously a bit more interesting, but that's nice. I do like landing with a bit of crosswind, always interesting. And as soon as we get closer to the VOR, I'll start turning with the Gyropilot, and then I'll engage navlog, and hopefully it will follow the 077 radial. But in my past experiences, it hasn't really done such a great job with that, so we'll see about this. Now seems like a good time to do the in-range checks as well.
Normal.
And let me just very quickly head over to Gyropilot mode.
On low.
And we can switch over to VLOC now.
Mains on, crossfeed off. Hydraulic bypass valve. Down. No smoking signs. On. In-range checks complete.
Okay, so I'm slowly going to turn towards 077 degrees. I'm also going to extend the first notch of flaps. I know we are still a bit fast for that, but the aircraft doesn't seem to want to really decelerate for us, so we don't really have much of a choice. I'm going to level off now and hopefully... Nope. No, 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 no. I completely screwed this up again. I'm just gonna have to take over manually, it seems. Which is fine, of course, so... Let's turn towards 090 degrees, approximately, so we can intercept this radial again. And let me just try to fix this autopilot again, real quickly. There's the radial. That's what happens when the knob for the gyropilot isn't fully centered when you try to engage localizer mode, so then the autopilot or gyropilot rather will automatically disconnect, which is not something you want, of course. But I thought it was fully centered, but apparently it wasn't, so... So let's see if it does it now. No. Doesn't seem to want to work anymore, so we'll just fly the aircraft by hand then, all the way down to our runway. And we'll also turn down the lights a little bit, since it's better to have the cockpit as dim as possible. And we should watch out for 8 nautical miles. That's the point where we will start turning back. You should also keep an eye on the trim, since we're getting a bit low. And final flaps 20 here. So it does seem like we indeed have a crosswind from the right, which will be a left crosswind in a second once we turn towards the runway. Since we do have to crab into the winds to keep our aircraft on this radial. And oh, we've crossed 8 nautical miles, so we'll go ahead and turn back. And we'll also set our next radial of 237 degrees. Like so. And in the meantime also keep an eye on the aircraft itself to make sure we don't descend too much. And before landing checklist.
Setting flaps 20.
Bit all over the place right now.
20 flaps set. Mixtures rich, please. Auto rich.
And as soon as we hit 8 nautical miles again, we want to start our descent.
Gear up and down, please.
Oh, gear up. Always remember to actually select your physical gear lever down if you have the honeycomb throttles. That's quite important. And there we go, we have the airport in sight, so we can level out just a bit here. This should be a good intercept angle.
Gear down and locked. 3 rings. Props. 2400 RPM.
So that's also going to help us to slow down.
2400 RPM set.
Our approach speed is about 120 knots, I believe, at this weight.
ADI. ADI off. ADI is off. Landing lights.
Almost at 8 nautical miles.
Good. Extending lights. Lights extended and on. RB. Call means cold. Set cold. Before landing check is complete.
And want to reduce the thrust now. While we start our descent, we want about 70 to 80 BMEP. And we don't want the descent to be too steep, of course, but also not too shallow. So there we go, we've intercepted the 237 radial, more or less, and we are now in a stable descent towards the runway. As you can see, the radial that we are following is slightly offset with the runway, but that's okay, we'll make a last minute adjustment then. And we can also extend the next notch of flaps now. Aircraft is gonna want to pitch up a little bit, so we have to counteract that. And flaps 40 for now. At a distance of 2 nautical miles, we should be about 1500 feet above the ground, so we are almost at that exact altitude, so we can shallow out the descent just a little bit. And we are still heading towards the runway. Not really on the radial anymore now, so and I'm going to go flaps 50 now, or full. And I'm just going to disregard the localizer entirely and just fly towards the threshold of the runway. The crosswind is really kicking us to the right here, so we'll counteract that. Try to stay on centerline as much as we can. I'll try my best to not to float too much, but also to get this landing as buttery as possible. Go to idle. There we go, we are down. Reversers. And there we go, guys, we've made it to the runway safe and sound. And we'll use this other runway here to turn the aircraft around, since there's only one taxiway that leads to the parking spots. Don't want to stop, of course. add in a little bit more thrust to get us moving. So yeah, I'm really glad we made it to the runway in one piece and we didn't go off the runway like I did the first time. And also I'm very glad that we didn't end up in the ocean, and especially that. So yeah, after landing checklist. And make sure we don't miss the taxiway, oh, which we did. Okay, so we have to turn back once again.
After landing checks complete.
And this turn really has to be quite sharp, but we'll make it. Somehow I missed those blue lights over there, don't know why. Let's go to the outside view here to actually see where we are going. Okay, so we need to go here. My bad. Well, that was quite bright, wouldn't you say? And we'll leave the parking checklist for once we get to that hangar right there. So we can already see in the dark that it's quite a nice scenery here. And I'll show you guys in the light in just a few moments. It's even nicer. So yeah. Right now focus on parking this quite large aircraft here. And make sure we don't hit any poles or anything like that. Like so, parking brake is set. Oh yeah, and also something before we actually turn off the aircraft, I can show you the replay of this landing, which is quite nice, I hope. Nicer than last time at least. So here we go. Fast forward a little bit to the runway. Didn't do a very bad job at this landing, I suppose. So yeah. Here's an outside view. Really glad I can finally show you an actual landing with the DC-6, that it's the way it should be. So it was still a bit of a rough landing by the looks of it, but overall not really that bad, I would say. Can't really see much from this perspective. Yeah, I'll give you a wing view as well. It's quite dark now, but yeah. That's quite a big rock next to the runway there. And there we go. So if I go ahead and do this, if I actually resume the replay, the aircraft will jolt forward like always, so to avoid that I was at my feet ready on the brakes there. Yeah, now we can do the parking checklist.
Parking brake is set. Cut entrance.
Now that we've shown the replay to you guys. Engines are coming off. One by one. So I'm not going to shut off the flight simulator just yet. There we have the flashlight again because all the power has disappeared to the aircraft. But let's make it a little bit more lighter here, shall we? So go to the weather and do it like this. There we go. Now it's a little bit better to see the absolutely gorgeous scenery of Marambio Airport, which is a completely freeware airport, by the way. You can get this airport on Flight Sim 2. I already said that in the last video. And also the airport that we took off from, I forgot to say that that's also a freeware airport that you can get on Flight Sim 2. So both links will be in the description below, as well as the link to this beautiful military air transport service livery, which is absolutely gorgeous. The person who made this really did a fantastic job with it. So let me just guide you around this airport real quickly. The main attraction, so to speak, of this scenery is of course the hangar with Marambio on it. That was the thing that caught my attention because it was the thumbnail of the download folder on Flight Sim 2. Yeah, the base is just surrounded by all sorts of nice little buildings and stones and rocks and pillars and all those things. It's just really a nice environment, so I highly recommend you download this airport for yourself and try to see if you can land at this airport the same way I did, in one piece and on the runway. It's quite a challenge, especially when the weather isn't on your side and also it's quite dark and there's wind and all of that. So yeah, really recommend this airport to anyone. But I would recommend coming in from the south or any other direction but the north, because in that region there's for some reason a bit of a Bermuda Triangle in Flight Sim. It's not actually the Bermuda Triangle, but that's what I'm gonna call it because it's an area when you fly through it the aircraft just doesn't work for you anymore, and I don't know why, it just happens mysteriously. So yeah, I guess I found the Bermuda Triangle of Flight Sim. So just try to avoid that area if you notice you experience the same problem as I did. But yeah, that's everything for this video, I guess. So just admire this view one last time of this beautiful aircraft. And in the next video I have something else very interesting planned, because we are going to take this aircraft to Saitek Airport, I believe. I'm going to try my best to make a video on that, since I think it's a very interesting approach. And the DC-6 actually has a Cathay Pacific livery, so that's ideal for that region of the world. So definitely stay tuned for that, and be sure you are subscribed to the channel with notifications on so you don't miss the video when it comes out eventually in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, be sure to like the video as well if you enjoyed it, and you're always more than free to leave a comment down below in the comment section, where you can ask me a question, aviation related or anything else. And if you want to see more from me, you can obviously watch some of the other videos that will pop up on the screen in just a moment, or you can follow me on Instagram as well, where I have quite a large follower amount. We've just reached 11,000 followers, so that's very nice. So you can always follow me on there as well. My Instagram name should pop up on the screen somewhere around now, and if it doesn't, you can just look at the description as well and you will find it there. But for now, I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.